All right, it was good to see you folks today. So my name is Matt Miller, and we're going to be talking today about how Google is revolutionizing education. And I can say from my own classroom and my own experience that this has done an awful lot for my students. So I'm excited to tell you some of the things that relate to that. And one of the cool things that we're going to get to do today is I get to do this presentation on this 70-inch touchscreen device. So it's basically got a computer built into it. It uses up to 10 touch points, so I can actually do 10 different touches. One of the things that I love about it that's really neat is that you can do this kind of 2-finger tap, and you can bring up this panel, and we can even kind of like annotate right on top of it. So I can use it, I can do different colors. If I make a mistake, I can use the palm of my hand and I can erase it. And then the best part about it is that if you hit this button down here, it'll save it directly to your Google Drive. So if you use Google, I mean, we're talking about Google here. If you're using Google Drive, it'll actually save this picture that you've annotated over right into Google Drive. So pretty cool stuff. So I can hit that to erase and then close out there. So anyway, we're going to be talking about how Google is revolutionizing education. I've got some experiences from my own class. Anybody that stays for the presentation gets a free copy of my book. They're right down here if you're interested in grabbing one of those. So anyway, let's go ahead and dig in. Before we get started real quick, if you've got teachers that you want to bring concrete, practical ideas back to, I've got this free ebook that they can go check out at this website here. So Google. The Google tools, I know for me, at least in the classroom, these have totally opened up my students to being able to do some pretty cool stuff. It's more than just using documents to write essays and doing slide presentations and stuff like that. And so just the ability to use those and to use these free tools has really opened things up to what we can do in our classroom. So those are some of the things I want to dig into real quick in this presentation. So the first one I wanted to talk about was student-centered learning. That's one thing that has been a nice change, at least in my own classroom, is that so often in classrooms you've got the teacher up front and you've got the board or the screen or whatever, and that's what the kids see. They see exactly what the teacher wants, and they don't have a whole lot of direction. But with some of the Google tools that have come along, we've been able to really personalize things for kids, which is neat. One way is to use Google Classroom. Google Classroom is basically a way to assign work, collect work, grade it, and then get it back to the students. But it gives us the opportunity to kind of like be in contact with students, to write them little comments on their document and say what they can change, or to give them encouragement. And it's kind of like a communication hub too. So it gives us this kind of like digital communication opportunity that we've never had before. And so just by using that, that's good. Here's another thing that I absolutely love is, let me go back real quick, this thing called HyperDocs. And so this was developed by some educators in California, and they basically take a document. But what they'll do is, instead of just having students read what's on that document, they'll turn it into kind of like an interactive lesson. And so what kids can do is they read through for a little while, but then it'll have a link out to a video that they can watch. Or maybe it'll have a prompt where they can go create something in Google Docs and then bring it back into that particular document. Or it'll give them a couple of different topics, and they can go gather some information about those topics, whichever one interests them the most, and then they can pull it back in. And so this is kind of like a framework that teachers can use for free that's out there. And so that's one really neat way that we're kind of bringing student-centered learning in, instead of just having the teacher driving everything up front. And so that's the site for HyperDocs. HyperDocs.co is it's a place where you can get some of these lessons already pre-created. So that's a really neat thing. Okay, so that was student-centered learning. Two more. This one is collaborative learning. This one's one that I'm kind of passionate about, is the ability to have students doing work together within the classroom, but also with other people around the United States and around the world. And so we can use some of these collaborative features in like Google Hangouts and Google Documents. I know, for example, with Google Hangouts, if you do like a video call, kind of like a FaceTime or a Skype or something like that, we're able to use this to bring people into the classroom. You can have guest speakers on whatever topic, whatever expertise that we need to pull in to talk to kids about the topics that we're working on. We can have these guest speakers come in. We can take kids on virtual field trips. All these things that we can do through these video calls just by making contact and doing the call during class, and then kids are able to, kind of like ask questions of these experts that have almost kind of like come into their own classroom. And then they can do collaborative work in Google Docs. And I've seen some really neat things with this where kids they'll get a document and they'll start working on some sort of activity or assignment, but they'll share this document with another student in another class in maybe a different city or a different state. And so these kids are kind of like doing a project together, but they're in completely different states, or sometimes even completely different countries. And they're able to work in those documents all together. And so that's one of the things that I love about the collaboration piece, is that they can work on it. They can work on the same thing practically from anywhere. This was one really neat thing that I got to do. I did this with Skype instead of with Google Hangouts, but these are my students in my high school Spanish class, and they got to do video calls with these students from Valencia, Spain. I mean, yeah, high school Spanish kids, right? Getting to talk to real live kids from another Spanish-speaking country. So we actually Skyped with these guys weekly for about 2 whole months. And so my kids who are from rural West Central Indiana, where everybody kind of looks alike, they got to talk to these kids and ask them things that they were curious about from a whole different country. It was really cool. And so the last one that I want to bring up that I really love about using Google in the classroom is that it can give instant feedback. Because so often when we do traditional homework, what is it? We assign it to the kids, and then they turn it in, and then they get that homework back like 2 days later. And if we've written comments on it, they're kind of past it. It's like that was so yesterday, that was so 2 days ago. But if we use Google Classroom again, we actually are able to write comments on the students' work. We can give them that feedback while they're actually working on it when it still matters to them. So those are some of the big things anyway that I really love about Google. So anyway, I kind of feel like Google's been revolutionary in my own classroom and in my own school. And if you've hung around for the presentation, you want a free copy of my book or a pen or whatever, those are all available to you right here. Because I've seen you guys have hung out for the whole thing, so I appreciate that. All right, thanks so much.